the church is one foundation, is Jesus Christ her Lord. On this day, at least in those churches aware of the issue, wouldn't be quite so much perhaps in countries completely severed from our culture, Russia and so on. There is this awareness of what binds us together rather than what separates us. In normal times, outside lockdown, Christians would tend to go to other worshipping communities on this day, or something would be organized and people would be praying for healing. But in place of the throwing of stones and books, there would be an understanding that actually in Holy Baptism we have more that binds us together than what actually separates us. In the specifically contemplative life, one becomes aware of that, because in the life of listening to the one who is talking, the one that actually is there binding us together, one sees things a bit as he sees them. In quiet times of waiting and wanting before him, one sees actually what it's all about. He is on side. All souls exist by divine command, and the upshot is that if we mess up our one journey, despite all the means he's given us, then he and the angels around him and all the court of heaven are saddened. I remember years ago, not far from here, when in formation in Kilnacrot, because as you know I was formed also there, it's a long story, sent me to Italy eventually. Well, something tragic happened. I'll tell you briefly, but it made me really aware of the issue. There was a little lassie who was about 8 years old in the giron of the abbey, not living there, but we had contacts with the family, and we knew that this was a very little special child who wasn't in any way contaminated, and that the Lord would talk to her and Our Lady. And she thought every child had it. She was so innocent and ingenuous. So anyway, sometimes we would, through her parents, ask one or two things. And through her I knew exactly, for instance, I had to be a priest, I had to be in Ireland, and I had to be east of Kilnacrot, exactly what happened in the long run. But sometimes things will also shock us. We were there in the cloister one morning, the abbot behind us, and we were ready to go onto the altar, waiting for his... But just before he gave it, because there was a priest from near the monastery, who was a friend of the monastery, who was on vacation with his family, and he was conservating with us, and in the place of honour next to the abbot. I was a novice, so I was right in front, and at a certain point somebody come whizzing through the door of the cloister and whispered quietly in his ear something, as a result of which he whooshed off his habit in the sacristy and went whizzing through the cloister and back out without concelebrating. They had just found, it had been his niece, hanging on her father's tie in the cupboard. A little later I was talking to the good lassie's boyfriend. She was very young. She might have been at the most 30, but she was a good lady, because she would come often to the monastery even on a weekday. That was the one thing. But the same family, on the other side of the family, being there for her cousin, was about the same time found in one of the lakes, because Cavan is full of lakes, and that was his end, and one didn't quite know what had happened. So eventually we wanted some kind of consolation or hope perhaps, and we asked this little girl, and this came back. as for the lassie, she is in the lowest level of purgatory and needs 40 eternal fathers. That's the prayer of St. Bridget of the Holy Souls, which normally I say every day at 3 o'clock, to get out of there, that level. So I undertook that in the Shrine of Divine Mercy there, and I felt at the 40th, there's something happening. It's a release from something anyway. The other, however, was frightening. Very short, but it was this. He is lost. And I forget whether this was the commentary or the actual word, but this was added when I got the message. Evil had got hold of him. Now in those days everyone went to church, as you remember, in the country. So he'd opted out or something and got involved with whatever it was. But then, because it was so personal, I realised that word, he is lost, went right through my being. I realised what it means. Now, in Latin, that would be damnatus est. He is damned. It all damn means that in Latin, to lose something, to lose an object. So we forget that the issue is there. Right now, since I've started this homily, I don't know how many have gone into that beyond. You have to multiply by 2 the seconds that have passed. Now, do you realise what the issue is? We consume energy and time in splitting hairs, insisting on things, and can't see the wood for the trees. Do you think the Lord makes the same mistake? He, as you see in the heart there, loves his creatures unspeakably. And in that heart there must be unspeakable suffering. Think of the guardian angel of a soul that it sees going 1 second after death into that state. Now, don't let anyone take you in. It's part of the devil's ingenious ploy to cancel the one fundamental reality from the equation of life. So in that context, do you see how, relatively speaking, it's very important that we have the vision of God with regard to other souls, and therefore to binding souls together in what they have. Do you see that our enemies are not outside the Christian family? And it would be wiser to cop on and do what the Lord said, and pleading before his passion with great intensity, that they may be one.